So they do a test where they ultrasound your arteries in your neck to look for plaque buildup. And before I did the weight loss, they did that. I had a 15% stenosis on this side.
Jim, how did you find carnivore?
Well, actually, it kind of found me, and I wouldn't say I'm fully carnivore. I'd say I'm more a low carb, more like ultra low carb, but less than 50 carbs a day. And sometimes I do carnivore just, straight. But so I'm 64 years old. And back in 1987, I'm 27 years old. I've the girl I'm dating, who is now my wife, started having some really bad colon problems. Got admitted to the hospital. They put me into a, I guess it's an isolation ward because they thought I had a viral infection and just uncontrollable diarrhea, spastic colon, I guess is the word I want to describe. And um, it kind of cleared itself up, but I've always been dealing with it most of my life. I can go days, if not weeks at a time, and all of a sudden I've got to go spend a couple hours in the bathroom. And it never at any of those times was the diet brought up. Um, and I never question it because you I've been like all of us, we've been raised to believe that we should be eating the food pyramid. So, I've kind of accepted the fact that I'm gonna have a spastic colon for the rest of my life, and it's certainly affected stuff that I do or plans that I make. I'd have to make sure there's a bathroom nearby so I can run to it. Um, so I'm dealing with that, and then as I'm kind of approaching my mid 50s, I'm starting to get these really bad headaches, and so I'm taking aspirins, and I'm wrapping, I'm literally wrapping bathrobe ties around my head with just for the pressure to help deal with the pain. And it's just getting so bad that I'm just going, okay, well, I'm 55 years old. This is normal. I have to live with it, not even questioning it. And one day, my wife gets a blood pressure monitor, brings it home. So I thought, well, I'll take my blood pressure. It was like 220 over 100. So I called up the family doctor, who I've never went and seen because I didn't feel like I needed to, and said, hey, I think I got a problem here. And they immediately put me on diuretics and lisinopril to manage the blood pressure. And it certainly got it down, but I'm walking around lightheaded and just feeling, miserable because I can't do anything without kind of, my head is spinning. And at that time, I was about 265 pounds. So I'm going on, at that weight from my mid 50s up until about March of last year, 2023. And I'm just tired of how tight my clothes are getting. And I had been listening to Lance Dreher. He's a former bodybuilder. He specializes in helping basically baby boomers, lose weight, and he understands that aging body. So I decided, I'd learn more about him. And he was a Mr. Universe twice and a Mr. America once. And just everything he was saying was, you can eat what you want. He didn't mention that you couldn't have the pastas and the breads, but you could have all the meat you want. So I set an appointment, went up to his studio, and brought my wife, and he basically said, here's how it's going to work. I'm going to have you take pictures of everything you eat. I'm going to tell you what you should be eating, and I'd like you to come up here twice a week and just do an intense 30-minute workout because we want to do strength building where you're losing the weight. So as I'm starting it, he's telling us you can have all the eggs you want, all the butter you want. And of course, my wife and I are thinking I'm going to die of a heart attack eating this stuff because we didn't know better. And so all of a sudden, I'm starting to go online looking for, understanding this better. And as I'm discovering, the doctors out there, and of course I'm like, huh, this actually is the right way to eat. I didn't really appreciate it. So I would say, so yeah, I started March of 2023. Um, Coming into May 5th, which is Cinco de Mayo, out here, at least in California or Arizona. Um, my head is so lightheaded that I'm on the verge of passing out. I realize my blood pressure is getting down to like 90 over 60. So I can't get a hold of the doctor. I decide to stop the blood pressure medication. I would say I think the half life on blood pressure medicines are like 24 hours, if I remember right in my research. So I stopped it within 2 or 3 days. My blood pressure was pretty consistently in the 120/80 range. I mean, almost consistently. So, I have not been on any blood pressure medication since May of last year. So that's amazing to me right there. Um, and I would say about that time, I was probably down 30 pounds. I mean, I probably by the time I came into December, I was down a total of 80 pounds. I think I sent you a before photo. If you want to share that, sometime later on, you're welcome to put it up on the screen. But the 80 pounds, and I'm kind of been hovering basically between 188 and 191. Kind of that's where I've been floating at, and I'm 6 feet tall. Um, so some of the interesting things that I've always just assumed were part of getting old, and I'll share you this stuff without being too graphic. But so I was having a lot of problems with like I said, diarrhea. I had some mucus leaking, and I was using these little pads to kind of keep it from coming out. And went into the gastroenterologist, had a colonoscopy. I said, I think I have hemorrhoids because I have this mucus leakage. And he's going, you don't have hemorrhoids. You need to have more fiber in your diet. And so I'm eating the fiber, and I'm miserable. My stomach's hurting, and I said, I can't keep doing this. And so I basically have been living with these little pads up until I started losing the weight. And all of a sudden, I'm noticing that I don't have the leakage anymore. And I'm not eating any plants. I mean, it's mostly meat, and proteins. So, yeah, there is zero reason in my mind to ever eat fiber to deal with, colon issues. So that was interesting. Another thing I started doing as I was coming to my 50s is my teeth were always hurting when I would brush them and rinse them with cold water. I would always warm up the water. I pour warm water into the water pick. I actually take joy in water picking and brush my teeth with ice cold water now because there is zero pain. And when I brought it to Lance's attention, he says, well, that's because you don't have the inflammation anymore. You're not having the sugars that were causing it. So that was fascinating. The other thing I had was I had a lot of calluses on my feet, and the calluses started going away. And I never connected that with the weight, which is an obvious. I should have realized that having that weight was forming the calluses on my feet. So they went away. And then something else that I thought was really interesting, and again, I'm trying. I'll keep this, child friendly. Um, Lance told me, he says, and I got a blood test, by the way, before I went to see Lance. He wanted to see everything, and he told me what I should get as far as the blood test done. He says, well, you're low in testosterone, you're borderline diabetic. I think my A1C was 6 at the time, or 5.9. So he says, once we get you going, your testosterone is naturally going to climb up. He says, your blood flow is going to improve. You'll be surprised with the difference, and your virility is going to change. You're going to feel like a young man. And so I would say we did this, the A1C 6 months later. I was down at 5 even. So, I mean, I'd gone from a 6 to a 5. My testosterone numbers had almost tripled, and I'm doing any testosterone supplements or anything. It's just naturally occurring from me being on the right diets, and I think exercise is part of it. Um, I've never taken a little blue pill, but I would tell you that after what I've done, that I wouldn't need a little blue pill. I mean, I like to jokingly tell my friends that I am James of 30. It's unreal how your physiology changes when you start treating your body the right way. All through this, my nurse practitioner is giving me the typical American food pyramid and tell me I should be able to hold certain things in my hand, and that's how much I should eat. And it's all of these things that basically they are being, calorie restricted diets is what it is basically. But and I think I sent you a screenshot of what she gave me, but I'm looking at it now. At the top is fruits and vegetables, whole grains, and products. And at the bottom, she says lean meats, poultry, fish, fats and sweets, and then low fat, non fat dairy foods. So, I mean, I almost can kind of rotate that thing 180 degrees, and that's what I'm doing now. Everything else has gone to the bottom. But I am a true believer in this. I am every time I have a chance. If I hear somebody in a restaurant and they're having issues, I hear a spouse talking to their husband or wife about maybe they've got some issues with diabetes and their medicine. I'll reach across the aisle and I'll tell them, you might want to take a look at this, and I'll share some videos that I say, if you have a chance, just look at these videos. In fact, now that Dr. Camberry's got the American Diabetic Society, I've been sharing that with people that I know have issues, that you need to not being paying attention to what big food and big pharma has been telling you. You know, so that's kind of my story in a nutshell, as it were. So.
Nice. Well, firstly, congratulations. Um, and I'd just like to pick up on that point you just talked about there first. How do people react when you do kind of say to them, "Hey, just watch a couple of these videos"?
It's almost like a friendly, yeah, I will, but whether they do or not, I don't know. And the ones that do notice the weight loss, they think I'm unhealthy because they've never seen me skinny. You know, so that's another interesting side of this is, people that haven't seen before don't even question me. In fact, I've had a few people that I meet for the first time just think I eat healthy and I work out. But the people that have seen me at 265 pounds and see me now, they'll look at this going, well, that's not healthy. I can see your Adam's apple. And I said, that's actually the way you should look. You should be able to see your Adam's apple. There shouldn't be a bunch of fat there hiding that from the world.
Well, actually, that's one of the problems, right? Because when you look like the majority of the people around you, like when you're overweight or something like that,
Mhm.
where when you're looking like the majority of people around you, you feel like, well, that's normal. So the worse people's health is getting, the more it's like, someone who's a normal weight looking the way we're meant to looks like, yeah, there's something wrong, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
100%.
So very hard to convince people that, this is the way you're meant to look.
I think one of the other things I'd like to mention is, for the people um, that are gonna do this and they do wanna do exercise, I can just gonna say be careful. My wife has gone to a gym, and after working out with a trainer like Lance, I've never had any aches or pains or sore muscles. And I've asked Lance about that. I said, well, why don't I feel the pain in my joints? And he talks about the what's called ATP. I guess it's a product that's the energy for the muscles. And he says when you're working out, your body produces lactic acids, and what we do is we keep you moving from one machine to the next so the acids don't have a chance to pull. Most guys will work out until they're sore. They let those acids pull and they're feeling sore the next day. Says if you're feeling burning sensation, you're not working out the right way. So, just for anybody that's watching this, if you're going to start working out, what you probably want to do, because if you're losing the weight, you need to replace that with exercise so you keep your bones strong, because you're going to keep that your weight basically we're strong because we're carrying the fat, right? So since I'm skinny now, I still want to keep my bone mass strong. So I'm doing the workouts twice a week with him. But I would say definitely be careful who you get as a trainer. Don't let them thinking you should be working out to the point that you're sore the next day, because it's not healthy.
So in that there, you mentioned your wife. How is your wife doing? Is
Yeah, she's fine now. We're both fine. She actually, Lance, sister Teresa, actually has been trained under his teaching. So we both go up there at the same time. We have a private gym. She gets her training, I get my training, and we leave from there. And she will stop and we'll go over to a hamburger place, get the patty, and eat that, and head home from there. So
it's just so much easier now, right? This way of eating, like you just go and grab the hamburger patty and you're satisfied, and there's no, "Oh, I need some popcorn as well," or something like that. It's just like you're done, right?
well, it's interesting. I don't have the cravings. My wife still has the cravings. Now, having said that, I do miss the pizza, but I don't miss it enough to damage what I've done, to improve my body. So I can't see myself ever going back to the way I was eating before. Having said that, if we have a family gathering, we'll have a cheat meal, but I feel miserable the next day after the cheat meal, and I never really appreciated how bad I felt from the food I was eating until I got off of the food. Um, I just assumed that everything I was experiencing was just part of getting older, and it really wasn't.
So, have you spoken since you started doing this? Have you spoken to your doctor, your nurse practitioner, and the person that gave you the heart healthy diet?
Okay,
Um,
so she's not happy at all. Um, in fact, my wife wanted to get off her what is it for the our arteries build up. I'm blanking on the name now. The medicine,
statins?
yeah, statins. So we've been seeing enough research and watching stuff to realize that nobody benefits from statins. There is zero evidence to show that they've improved people's lives or extended their lives. And so, we told her that, my wife's getting off the statins. I've never had to go on the statins. I mean, my cholesterol's always been pretty much in what they would consider a normal range. Although now it's a little elevated, but my triglycerides are really low, so I'm not even worried about it. I did advanced lipid panels, so I got a large buoyant, particles, so I'm not worried about it. But so we told her, look, we're not going to agree on this. I know you have to follow office protocol or whatever you have to follow, so you don't use your license. But we are doing this. You may not like it, and I was going to ask her to do a CAC score for us, which is you know, carotid artery calcium score. And she actually brought it before I did, going, well, I'd like to do a CAC on both of you. And I says, perfect, let's do it. And before I do that, so they do a test where they ultrasound your arteries in your neck to look for plaque buildup. And before I did the weight loss, they did that. I had a 15% stenosis on this side. And she says, at your age, it's not that bad. It's okay. But about 6 months into the weight loss, I started a course of berberine because, again, Dr. Eric Berg talked about how great that was for breaking down the plaques. So I did that. 6 months later, I went in for the second artery scan. She said, whatever you're doing, keep it up. She says, there is zero plaque now. So I was telling Lance about this. He's going, part of it is you couldn't just do that and eat the way you're eating. Part of it is, being low carb and then having it. They work hand in hand. So, you can't just go taking supplements thinking they're going to cure everything. You have to be on the diet that they work hand in hand in. So that was cool. Okay. So she sends us for the CAC score. My wife's was 0. Mine was 30, which is it's almost nothing. I mean, there's one little piece of plaque buildup, which I think if I go in now, it's probably gonna be gone. So, I'm 63 years old. I have zero plaque basically. My heart muscles are strong. She said, it's interesting. When they first did it, there was a little bit of buildup, I guess, on an area of the muscle. That happens when you don't have a lot of exercise. But now I'm having the exercise. She says that's starting to get back to normal now. So I am just blown away, how much better life is being on this diet. Nobody can convince me ever to go back to the way I was eating. I don't know where you're at, if you have a Costco or not, but it's basically it's kind of a box store, and we go in there once a week. We stock up on meats, and we use a cooking method called sous vide. Basically, it's vacuuming the air out of a bag and putting it in water at 130 degrees. And we have steaks almost every night. I'm become the perfect steak cooker at this point. In fact, we used to go out to Capitol Grill, which was a very high-end steakhouse. I think my steaks are better. I mean, we just love the steaks, so we stock up on them. We know how to buy the bigger cuts of meat and cut the steaks out ourselves now. So
Oh, nice. And is that the only time you're eating in the day at night, or are you having a breakfast or a lunch?
so it's interesting you should ask that question. So for me, I was doing breakfast and lunch, or breakfast and supper, and then if I would do lunch, it would be something light. And recently, Dr. Sunil Dan, who I've really started enjoying lately, he seems to really not have any respect for the medical industry, and he's a doctor himself, so he doesn't like his own doctors. He gets it. So he was talking about, look, whoever started the commercial that breakfast is the most important meal of the day was lying to you. You don't need to have breakfast. You can do lunch and supper. So I do lunch and supper now. And usually lunch is I'll cook 3 eggs, 4 strips of bacon. I may saute a handful of blueberries, and that's it. So that's my lunch. In fact, I know how to cook eggs every possible way. So
And what do family and friends think about this? Is this like this goes against everything we've ever been taught, right?
yeah, yeah. I have tried to nicely, my wife's sister, who I think would really benefit by this diet. I've been nice, trying to, as politely as I can, just say, look, in fact, I bought Dr. Berry's book, Lies My Doctor Told Me. I said I'd love to send it to her and have her read it, because I don't think she's going to believe what we're telling her, even though it's working for us. So, yeah, it's hard to get people to believe it. Again, most of them think I look unhealthy, because they have never seen me this way before. So that's probably the biggest challenge, is just having them overcome that this is the way humans should look if they eat the right way.
I think one of the hard things as well, apart from the like people see fat as being unhealthy, one of the harder things for people to get their head around is not eating so often, because the regular diet, you're always thinking about food. It's
Yeah.
always like breakfast, then I'm thinking about morning snack, then I'm thinking about lunch, then I'm thinking about afternoon snack. And the day just goes in these 2 hour increments of feeding.
You
And
know,
changing
I
that is impossible for many people.
I did a 36-hour fast. And I told my wife, well, one morning, I says, I'm going to do a 36-hour fast because I mean, I still have a little bit of a gut, maybe, 5 pounds. And Lance says it's loose skin, but I just don't like it. And I was never hungry through the entire process. So, and I think I drank more because I felt like I should. I wasn't even thirsty. So, there's a lot to be said about your body, surviving on ketones, which is your fat. So,
Yeah, but it's just kind of a different perspective though from the regular diet, like unless you've experienced it, it's very hard for, if you want to call it an outsider to see how beneficial it could be or how easy
yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
Hmm.
There's a restaurant chain out here called In-N-Out Burger, and we do go there. I get what's called the Flying Dutchman. It's 2 patties with 2 pieces of cheese on it. And again, we'll be sitting outside at the tables, and I'll hear a couple talking, health issues, and I'll walk over, just kind of, mention to them, hey, you might want to take a look at some of this stuff, and I'll mention, names, and it's nice the wife will actually put it in her phone, and hopefully that they've done some research. But I'd like to know that, I just put, whenever I have an opportunity to put the word out, I do.
At this point for you, this is it. There's no going back.
I don't see it. I don't see it at all. I mean, even the bathroom visits, maybe twice a week now. I don't even have to go as frequently as I did, and the stools are definitely more like, I have a dog, and I'm always going out collecting the dog stools to make sure she's okay. I mean, I look at myself now going, this is what healthy stools look like. I haven't had this in years. The stomach isn't grumbling. I don't have the gas. I'm not worried about, somebody hearing something or smelling something. I can't remember the last time I had gas. I mean, that's how good this has been.
It's just a complete about face. Like that was one of the things I noticed for myself when I first got started, was like those kind of issues just disappeared. You're not sitting there going, "Oh no, I've got some gas here. What's going to happen with this? Do I need to get to the bathroom?"
Yeah. Oh my
Or
gosh.
yeah,
I used to keep moist wipes with me all the time because of that. It was crazy. I don't keep anything anymore. So, yeah. I like to fly model airplanes. I don't have to worry about it. I can spend all day at the field now. I don't even worry about having to find a bathroom somewhere. It's been fantastic.
a lot of people are going through life feeling like having these problems, and just thinking, well, this is just a normal part of being a human. But as you mentioned, checking the dog, you would think if your dog or your cat is suddenly they're having diarrhea or something like that, you would be like, there's a problem. I need to get them to the vet to get this checked out. But we never think that about ourselves typically, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's funny you should say that. In fact, I would jokingly tell my wife, we take better care of our dog than we do ourselves.
Yeah, and then you go to the vet, and the first thing the vet asks you is, "What's he eating?"
Yeah.
Whereas you go to a doctor, they never ask you that. They'll say,
Mhm.
"How many drinks do you have during the week? Do you smoke?" But they never say, "What processed food did you have over the last week?" Right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's just really odd to me. With all the health issues I've been dealing with, it's never been a question. It's more, how can we treat that with medicine? But what is that saying? We don't have a healthcare industry. We have a sick care industry. And boy, is that true?
Yeah. Well, sick care industry makes a lot more money for a lot more people. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So if one of your friends came to you and said, "Look, I want to start carnivore. How do I do it?" Or even, "I want to get started with some kind of level of a ketogenic diet. How do I get started?" What would you advise them?
Well, it's funny. I have found so much value in what Lance has had to offer that I have volunteered. He's got a radio show. I volunteered to help him. I used to produce radio shows, so I have offered to help him produce his radio show, his literature for his program. So I actually have the sheets of paper with what you should eat with the carbs on it. So I have that information I can share with friends, and they can actually do their own formulas. And Again, at least keep, there's a formula, as you may know, based on your desired weight and how many carbs you should be taking in. I mean, for me, I think it was 60 or 65. I'm so far below that even now. I mean, rarely even, have carbs at this point. But and if I do have any plant matter, it's usually I like thyme for the steaks for seasoning. It isn't something as a side. So yeah, so I've got everything, and in fact, I would encourage anybody that I know, if they want to do this, to take pictures of everything they eat and send it to me. And that I do the same thing Lance does. Lance would give me the thumbs up or the thumbs down, or say too many carbs, or or not enough protein. See, but that was the accountability. I think that's the biggest thing is doing this on my own. I'm not sure I would have been as good about it if it wasn't for the accountability. Having my spouse here, of course, helps, because now we're both doing it, so we're not having two different meal plans. Um, there is a product called Kevin's Chicken, and also Kevin's Meats, and I don't know if you have that where you're living, but basically it's pretty popular at Costco, and I've seen it in the grocery stores. It's sous vide beef or chicken, and it comes with a flavoring pouch, and it's all paleo. So when you get it, you cut it open, break the meat up, you brown it on the pan, you heat up, you pour the sauce on it, heat it up, and then within 15 minutes you have a meal. My wife and I will just do that, and we'll share that, and that's our meal. So, and it's paleo, it's low carb. It can eat the whole thing. A lot of them are. If I ate the whole thing, it's 15 carbs. So
So, what about the claim people have that this way of eating is restrictive? What would you say to that?
it's pretty easy. I mean, I don't have to worry about a shopping list. I go in the store and buy the meats and eggs, and I'm done. So it's no restrictions at all. I don't have to worry about breads and in fact, I keep going back to Costco. We buy a big old stack of butter, big old stack of bacon. As a matter of fact, once a week I take a griddle out back and I cook up 2 packs of bacon, wrap them up in individual, four pieces per wrap, and I'm ready for the next couple of weeks. So I mean, I've got a little system going here, and it's I don't have to sit there and worry about meal plans. It's pretty straightforward. And I never was a steak eater, and I think part of it was I didn't know how to cook the steak. In fact, I mean, I know how to cook it and how to enjoy the fat on it, and we eat the whole steak, and we don't even cut out the fat. So
People that do think this way of eating is restrictive tend to be people who are treating their food as entertainment, right?
yeah, yeah. There is a lady. I can't remember her name. Her name is Evelyn, and she's got a name for the food like that. If you're going to eat a piece of cake, you're eating it for entertainment, not for nutrition. And she's nicknamed Carbs Garbage. And I love those two terms. So, are you eating for entertainment or for health? So, Violet. Sorry, Evelyn. I didn't mean to say that. Her name is Violet. That just came to me. So,
Is that Violet from the Road to Health?
yeah, that's it. I forgot her channel.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So, Jim, if people want to reach out to you, can they get in contact via social media somehow or
You
any
know,
other way?
I don't have any social media, but I would refer them to Lance's YouTube channel. In fact, let me just real quick on my other screen here. I'm going to get you the name of the channel. And we had Dr. Ken Berry on his show, by the way, and he was a great interview. He was there for almost the entire show. But for Lance, if you want to search, it's Dr. Fitness or Lance Drawer. You can't miss him. But everything that's on there. In fact, I'm in some of his interviews, so you hear my voice. I'm usually off screen, but that's where I would go. Everything he's been talking about this since the '80s. If we have a few more minutes, I'd like to share something with you about Lance I just discovered recently. So we have an issue here in Arizona. It's called valley fever. Basically, when the winds kick up, the spores get blown to the air, and they can get deposited into your lungs, and then fungus starts growing. And I had a business partner several years ago that actually died from this. They actually thought he had lung cancer, but it was actually the spores growing in his lungs, but it was misdiagnosed. So Lance told me recently, he was doing low carb as a bodybuilder, and that they knew about this back in the '80s. And then he said in the '90s, I believe it was, he ended up getting valley fever, went to the doctor, and they want to put him on all these medications. And he's got a new family, and they're telling him, that this is basically a death sentence. And in his research, and he's got his PhD in nutrition, by the way. In his research, he's realizing that your body's basically a petri dish for these fungi if you're eating a high carb diet, because you're filling it with sugars. So he decided, I'm not going to do these medications. I'm going to basically do a low carb diet. And I don't know how long it had passed, but he went back to the doctor, got all these tests done. They came back and he told me, he says, "Wow, this is great." He says, "Keep it up." And Lance says, "Well, I haven't been taking your medicine." And the doctor says, "Well, if you want a second opinion," and Lance says, "No, no, no, it's not you. I want to keep you as a backup, but I've been doing my research." He says, "The sugars are what are feeding this. So I decided to cut the sugars out, and that's what I've been doing." And he says, the doctor says, "Actually, that makes sense." He says, I never thought about it that way." So again, I think a lot of things that we medicate ourselves for could be resolved through, a low carb diet, get the sugars out.
Yeah, and props to the doctor as well for actually listening and going, "Yeah, I never thought of that. That's a good idea." There's not many doctors that would react that way these days.
Yeah, but I love what you're doing. I think you're on a great mission here. It's funny, most people that are doing stuff that are on the American diet plan are doing it because they will have sponsors. But we're out here doing this stuff, not looking for money. We're doing it because we think it's great for people. We want to spread the word.
Yeah, that's the thing, we get a lot of detractors, especially on Twitter, kind of saying, "Oh, these carnivores, they're just trying to sell their things and whatever." And it's like, we're not selling anything. There's nothing to sell. It's like,
So
just go and eat meat.
yeah,
If anything, we're giving business to the supermarkets or the butchers.
yeah.
So, I'll link to Lance's channel below. Jim, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate you sharing your story and taking the time to do it. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me.